welcome to our eighth part of this series for our Interfaith and Outreach Committee. We want to welcome you all to our Ramadan lecture series. Thank you so much for joining us. May the peace and blessings of God be upon all of you, and also Ramadan Kareem to all of the Muslims out there. I pray that everyone is staying safe and healthy during this time. So we are so happy to have all of you here this evening, and I want to give a special welcome to our interfaith guests who are joining us from other faiths. My name is Donnell Ferguson, and I have been a member of the Muslim community at MCC since 2010, when I made a transition to Islam over the course of that year. So my background is actually in the arts and performing arts, music and theater. And then I actually moved to the Chicago area to attend graduate school. I attended seminary at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in Evanston. And I was finished my MDiv, and I worked in the church, the United Methodist Church. So alhamdulillah, that was, thanks be to God, that was a really wonderful time in my life. And during that time, I learned about Islam, and I ended up making a faith transition to become a practicing Muslim. So the MCC community has always been a welcoming, wonderful part of my life. And currently, I am working at MCC Academy as the librarian there for the elementary school. So at this time, as more people are joining us, we are going to just transition over to talking about our census in a moment. But I do want to mention that we have 7 other lectures that are posted currently through Facebook Live and also through our MCC Interfaith and Outreach page, which you can find online. And tonight, our topic will be time management. So at this time, I would like to, actually, before we do that, let me give you a little more history of MCC. So in February of 1969, a group of Muslims from diverse backgrounds formed the Muslim Community Center. So this is actually one of the oldest and largest organizations in the Chicagoland area. And we have facilities at 3 different locations that are all under one administration. So currently, MCC has over 1,700 paid members, and the weekly Friday congregation, which typically would meet at both masjids for Jummah Salah, exceeds over 3,000 people. So MCC is actively involved in making connections in the community, and some of our highlights over the past year have been the Welfare and Rehab Committee. Our youth of MCC have been distributing food, dropping off prescriptions, and delivering essentials for seniors and people who don't have the flexibility to do it themselves. MCC has also been helping with rent and utilities for many families during this difficult time. So through the pandemic, the doors of MCC are closed, and Ramadan, of course, is our time to raise funds. So through your generosity and as an obligation of zakat and charitable giving, we do ask that you would please continue to donate using the link in the chat box for Lunch Good, as well as to keep programs like this running. We also understand that there are many other nonprofits and organizations that are struggling at this time. So whatever you are able to give today or in the future would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So we thank you in advance for your generosity. And we know that if you can't give at this time, inshallah, God willing, you will give in the future. Now we will transition to Fatima Sadiqa, and she's going to talk to us about our census. So Fatima, would you please say more about the census?
Sure, thank you, Donnell. So my name is Fatima. I'm a census fellow at the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, and I just want to talk to you about the census that's currently ongoing. So first, we'll start with what is the census. So the census happens every 10 years, and it's just a questionnaire of every single person living in the US, and the government is actually obligated to do this by the Constitution. So in 2020, the census has 9 simple questions on race: who's living in your house, what's your sex, your phone number, your date of birth, simple questions like that. And for the first time ever, it'll be online. So it's really easy to fill out. Why is it important? There's 2 critical things we get out of the census. The first one is, of course, congressional representation in the US House of Reps. So right now, Illinois has 18 reps, and if we have an undercount, we could lose another seat. The second thing we get is $700 billion in federal resources for things like infrastructure, for educational aid. So if you're in college, this is something that's really important to us right now, for medical aid, for just all the public facilities that we use. So back in early March, you should have received a letter like the one you see on the right that has your household's unique ID, but you don't need this to fill it out. You can just go on to 2020census.gov and use your address to complete it. Because we're in April, there's 3 ways you can fill it out. You can go onto the website, my2020census.gov, and complete it there, or you can call on the phone and actually get language assistance and complete it. Or you can mail back a census form, but this is actually very rare to receive an actual physical form, so it's best if you just complete it online. So these are some of the stories from our community on why they want to be counted. I know right now it's a really difficult time, and census is really the last thought that we have. It's really on the back burner. But by filling it out, you're really preparing Illinois for a situation we could be having in the future by getting us thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in funds. And the other reason is because every single person can be counted. You can be undocumented. You can be a permanent resident. You don't have to be a certain age. Any person can fill out the census. So this is our community's chance to get your voice heard. Additionally, the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition also offers any kind of assistance that you may need when filling out the census. So you can call our 24/7 hotline if you need actually any kind of care, so medical care, financial care, anything. And then also if you need help filling out the census, you can let us know and we'll definitely try to help you. So that's how you fill it out. Please go to my2020census.gov and complete your household census if you didn't already. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Fatima. And I have to say that early on in our lecture series, I am one of the people who had not filled out their census for their family. And so I wrangled up my little paper and I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it online. She gave us the link. I'm going to go ahead and do that. It took me like 2 minutes. So I type pretty fast. So depending on how fast you type or how much information you need to enter, it really won't take that long. All you need is that little number and it's super easy to do. So thank you for encouraging me and reminding me. And I took your tips and I did it online, but you can also just mail it back in. So thanks again, Fatima. All right, so at this time, we will go ahead and segue into our topic for the evening. And so I'm actually going to start us out by talking about time management and try to get us in the frame of mind for what that means in our lives, what it looks like. So one way to gain perspective is to think about time in increments. So I'd like to start out with that analogy of looking at something and kind of narrowing in. So we're going to start with, if you want to know the value of 1 year, just ask a student who failed a course. To know the value of a month, ask a mother who just gave birth to a premature baby. To know the value of 1 hour, ask 2 lovers who are waiting to marry. If you want to know the value of a minute, ask the person who just missed their bus. To know the value of a second, ask the person who just escaped death in a car accident. And if you want to know the value of 1/100th of a second, ask the athlete who won the silver medal in the Olympics. So as we think about time, we can think it down to the most minutia amount, right? So we have the long-term perspective, but we also have those seconds. And so I would invite you to think about those seconds of our day in another analogy. So for example, we have 86,400 seconds in a day. So let's just round it to 80,000 seconds in a day. So if we think of each second like $1, okay? And seconds, we know we can't roll over seconds to the next day. So if we think of 80,000 seconds and each of those are equivalent to $1, how would you spend that $80,000? Would you just let it go to waste? Or would you try to figure out the best way to utilize that money, to donate it, or to do good in the world, or do good things for your family. Maybe you would use it for something not so great. But how would you spend that money? So today we're thinking about time in that way, and time management, and how we can treat each second, each moment of the day like a gift, and how we can utilize our time wisely. So at this time, I would like to introduce our main speaker for today, which is Sheikh Ibrahim Khader. He is the Imam at the Muslim Community Center at the 3 locations that we named earlier. And he originally came from Charlotte, North Carolina, where he was raised. So Sheikh Ibrahim has a dynamic personality. I would also say he has a very calming personality, I have found, along with a conviction to hit the ground running and add youthful vigor in the MCC community. Absolutely. So he was hired in January of 2019, and he still is currently holding his lectures, classes, and Friday bayans online despite the quarantine. So please check that out. Sheikh Ibrahim holds his bachelor's degree in Sharia from the Islamic University of Medina, along with a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. He brings a wealth of knowledge in both secular and religious education. In addition to his double bachelor's, Sheikh Ibrahim holds, I'm sorry, I am not good with Islamic pronunciation, but I believe it's Ijaza and Hafs, and the 6 books of Hadith. If I said that wrong, please, inshallah, correct me. Sheikh Ibrahim also led Taraweeh for the last 10 years in North Carolina, New Jersey, and New York State, Virginia, and Oklahoma. So he has been a very busy man. Alhamdulillah, thanks be to God. He really enjoys going on adventures, reading, playing soccer, swimming, and drinking lots of coffee. And I can attest that he probably also enjoys spending time with his lovely wife, who I have had the pleasure of meeting. So without any further delay, I would like to turn it over to our speaker for today, Sheikh Ibrahim.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Donnell. Peace be upon everyone. I pray that this reaches everybody in the best of states and the best of faith. I pray that everyone is healthy and is able to deal with the current situation that we are facing in the most sound of manners. So you mentioned the importance of time, and from a generic sense, it is very important. And if you were to ask any person about something that they've dealt with in the past, you'll find that it goes back to a specific parcel of time that they found to be important. And we as humans build our life based off of time. Our whole clock, our internal clock, revolves with the sun and the moon, and or the day and the night. And if it goes into flux, we kind of lose sense of ourselves. And so as people, we definitely hold time to be very, very important. And just imagine not having a digital clock, or not having your analog clocks, or these things around you to know when something is due or when something is supposed to be done. You'll find that you've built your life around time. And Islam as a religion emphasizes time as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may he be praised, he mandated upon Muslims many different types of rituals and worships. Each one of them is bound by time. So for example, we fast the month of Ramadan. The actual fast goes based off of time, from sunset till sunrise, or from sunrise till sunset. And it goes from the beginning of Ramadan till the end of Ramadan. So it's restricted to time. Our daily prayers, the 5 daily prayers, are also restricted to time. And Allah, He mentions this concept, the importance of time, in one verse where He says, "Inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta." Indeed, prayer was prescribed upon the believers in a very rigid or very structured timetable. And so time is something that is of the essence, as they would say. It's extremely important for us as Muslims, as human beings. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, he tells us and he advises us in many different narrations talking about the importance of time. He mentions in, for example, one narration where he says, take advantage of 5 before 5. One of them is taking advantage of your free time before your busy time. And he also says, peace be upon him, mentioning the importance of the blessing of time, he says there are 2 blessings that most people neglect and they don't treat properly. Those 2 are health and time. And in our situation that we're facing with the coronavirus and quarantine and all these crazy times that we're facing, these 2 resonate all the more important. And then the last tradition that I want to mention of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he says that every person on the day of judgment, will be questioned before God. He will stand before God and he will be asked about everything in his life, and his feet will not move until he answers these questions. One of the questions is his life and how he spent it, meaning the time that he lived and how he filled his time. And our scholars in the past, they mention, they say that, O son of Adam, humanity, basically, your existence is a collection of time. If one day goes away, then you've lost a piece of yourself. So your time is limited. And how we define ourselves and how we define our future goes back to how we fill our time. Now shifting gears and talking more about time management, to manage our time better, obviously we have to understand its value. That way, for a person to manage his money, he has to know the value of money. It's the same thing with time. You have to know the value of time to manage it properly. And part of knowing its value is knowing your purpose. And that goes back to your spiritual alignment. You have to have a very strong spiritual sense to define your purpose. And once you define your purpose, you are able to manage your time better because you're doing something for the right reasons. A clear example of this would be like a quarterback in the last minute or minute and a half of a game, in a football game. He has the ball and he's down by 6 points. He needs to get a touchdown to win the game. And he knows what he wants, and he knows how to achieve it, and he knows that his time is limited. If he has this purpose in mind, he will manage his time properly, and that's actually what makes a quarterback elite or not. So you have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Roethlisberger, whoever they are, they manage their time properly, and that's what makes them all the more special and all the more valuable as players than people who do not manage their time properly and they are wandering aimlessly. And God teaches us the importance of having a purpose by telling us about paradise, telling us about the afterlife, that we live our life in a structured manner, looking at something at the horizon. And that is what we are working for, and that is the purpose that we are striving for. If we have that vision all the more clear, then our time management becomes all the more structured. And so having a spiritual sense is extremely important when it comes to time management. The other aspect of time management, and this is extremely important as well, is having a clear mental image of your time and how you are going to structure it. And an example of this would be, for example, having a whiteboard and you draw out your timetable. You say, okay, I have to go to sleep at 10 p.m. and I have to wake up at 6 a.m. Once I wake up at 6 a.m., I have to spend 30 minutes doing this. I have to spend 45 minutes doing this. I have to, allocate a certain amount for exercise. I have to allocate a certain amount for recreation. I have to allocate a certain amount for worshiping God. And so everything has its due proportion. And when you write it out and you have a clear mental image, that makes it all the more easier to manage your time properly. And I can't stress this enough. And that's also, again, going back to that sports analogy, when they have the clock in front of them and they see it in the, whether it's in the billboards or on the sides, they're looking at the time, the whole time. When, for example, they want to do a false start or something, they're looking at the clock as it's counting down, knowing exactly where they stand. And so you have to be aware of your time. And when you act, you have to act intentionally, not coincidentally. You can't just, success doesn't happen. It just doesn't fall out of the sky and, you're just successful, right? You have to work for it, you have to intend it. And time management is the same thing. You have to be intentional with your time management, not wandering haphazardly, not knowing exactly what to do. The third aspect of time management, and this is very crucial, is the more physical or tangible sense of this concept. And that is, it has to do with your body, and it has to do with the atmosphere around you. What do I mean by your body? I mean your health, how you take care of your hygiene, whether it's taking a shower or smelling good, looking good. You have to have that physical aspect to it. And we as Muslims make this mistake a lot when we're breaking our fast. If we break our fast and we consume a lot more than we can handle, usually people, they get into sleep comas because they're eating too much. When you eat too much and you fill your stomach and you're too heavy, you're not going to be able to perform your next task that perhaps you already managed in your timetable. And so you have to take care of what you consume. As someone who drinks coffee, Sister Donnell mentioned, I like coffee, I love coffee. Sometimes you make the mistake of drinking too much. And if you drink too much and it's too strong, it ruins your sleep schedule. And if your sleep schedule is ruined, then your next day is going to be ruined because you're going to be tired. And so each action has a consequence. And what you consume has to be calculated, it has to be managed properly. I am very guilty of not doing this properly. I hope I can follow my own advice with this. But it's important to take care of your body. Even the way you dress and how you are, for example, in today's situation and circumstance, we're always in pajamas. Maybe we're walking around in pajamas for 7 days straight, not changing what we're wearing. It's important to not fall into that and to dress according to our time. And so, for example, if I have to do my prayer, I dress in a way that's adequate for my prayer. If I'm going to exercise, I dress in a way that's appropriate for my exercise. If I want to study, the scholars, they say that you would wear something nice while you study. It actually has an impact on your mental being as you're writing and reading. Smelling good, that's also important. Your posture, how you take care of your physical body is important when it comes to time management, and it cannot be overlooked. Because if you're feeling lazy because of your clothes, or maybe you haven't taken a shower in the morning or whatever, you're feeling lazy because of that, it's affecting your next tasks that you have to do. And so taking care of yourself is extremely important when it comes to time management. The other aspect of of the physical sense is your atmosphere around you, whether it's your room or your living room or the kitchen or whatever it may be. It has to be adequate to the task that you're trying to complete. Having things thrown in a way that is unorganized can probably throw you off. You will feel demoralized. You don't really want to study. You don't really want to work if your desk is all over the place. So keeping it tidy is extremely important. But it goes beyond that. There are psychological effects on our surroundings and how we learn and how we deal with our tasks that we're facing. For example, when I was in Medina, my teachers would say, if you want to memorize, make sure you memorize. If you want to sit down and just memorize a phrase or memorize a definition or memorize a page, when it comes to planting that memory in your brain, you want to have the area around you very restricted. So for example, facing a wall or those desks with the two sides, the two panels, having that limited space around you helps you in memorizing. But if you want to read and internalize information, right? If you're, for example, reading a book or reading an article or whatever it may be, reading in an open space helps you internalize that information more. And so each task has its, you want to take your due diligence for each task that you're taking. They're not all the same. And so studying and working and reading, and even if you're going to exercise or whatever you're going to do, you want to make sure that the environment around you complements or supplements what you're trying to do. And so that's the physical aspect of your time management. The fourth, and this is also extremely important when it comes to time management. The fourth point is your emotional well-being. being a servant or being subservient to your emotions actually causes you to fall short in the task that you're trying to complete. You have to be in control of your emotions, and you have to be composed and poised and ready to handle what you're facing without being in turmoil on the inside. So the scholars, they mentioned when we were studying about law, they give the example of a judge. And they say that a judge, back maybe I would say 800 years ago, they were not allowed to attend a case, to rule in a case, if they were hungry, or they were angry, or they were overly excited, or they got into some kind of dispute over something, or there's any form of emotional, even if they had to use the bathroom, any form of emotional turmoil or internal turmoil, they would have to take care of that first, and then they can attend the case, because you want to have your clarity of mind. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was described by his beloved wife Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. She says that the Prophet, peace be upon him, he wouldn't laugh out loud. You wouldn't hear him go like ha 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 ha, making that noise when he's laughing. And when he would laugh, you wouldn't even see the back of his teeth. You would only see his, I guess I don't know what they're called, but you would see the front teeth. That's his laugh would be a smile in which his front teeth would show, meaning he's not laughing and he's not overexerting himself in joy. He's controlling himself in that time of joy. You know, he would smile, he would greet people kindly, and he would have a welcoming face, but it's not to the point where he's out of control. And at the same time, that's on the spectrum of joy. We also want to look at the opposite side. When a person came and asked him, "O Prophet of God, advise me," he told him, peace be upon him, he said, "Do not get angry." And he said, "Okay, what else?" He said, "Don't get angry." He said, "What else?" He said, "Don't get angry." And so that we take that, we understand everyone is going to go through sadness. Everyone is going to go through anger. Everyone is going to go through joy, but we are not ruled by our emotions. If you become ruled by your emotions, then you are not able to manage your time properly. And so you have to be in control. You have to be composed of yourself and not be reactionary. That way, every task, you're able to deal with it properly with clarity of mind, and you're able to accomplish your goal that you're trying to achieve, whether that is financial or educational, academic, or even, you know, when it comes to our spiritual sense and attaining the highest ranks in paradise. It goes back to how we manage our time. If we're not able to manage our time based off of these 4 aspects, we will fail. These are the important ingredients for successful time management. I'll open it up for discussion with Donnell, if you want to join us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah, that was wonderful. Thanks be to God. So hopefully most of our attendees were able to hear the majority of your talking points from an Islamic perspective. So I know when we spoke earlier, we were discussing how, prior to the COVID-19 situation and all of us having self-isolation, that most of us had some routines in our lives that were well established. Even if we worked from home and other things, we still had routines that were outside of our homes. And so being homebound and having to restructure our daily lives in a more confined space, how that can be really challenging, both mentally, physically, spiritually, all of those things. So I know for me, hearing it from an Islamic perspective and how important the spiritual component of that organization and that discipline actually will then help my daily life, my physical life, my state of heart. I know earlier you had mentioned state of heart when we were talking, on that emotional level. So time management is actually important in that way. And as you were talking, I was remembering when I was learning about Islam, I was taking a Wesleyan class because I was Methodist, and the founder of the United Methodist, or the Methodist faith, or Methodist branch of Christianity, he was very methodical. He would wake up at the same time every morning and pray. He'd pray throughout the day. And there are a lot of other faith traditions where they have very regimented prayer times for that exact reason. So spiritual discipline can really help shape our lives in other ways, and it can provide us a discipline within our heart that then can can transition into our daily lives. So when I was learning about Islam and began practicing more, that is an aspect of the faith that I really appreciated, having it more prescribed. And I noticed that after I became Muslim and I did practice my prayers and I did other aspects of the faith, that it did help me kind of reevaluate my life, and it gave me an anchor in a way, so that in those times that were more difficult, or things there are always things out of our control. So having something prescribed spiritually, it can be really helpful. Knowing that, okay, at this time of day I'm going to pray, and no matter what, that's my focus. And so it gives me an opportunity to release my concerns, ask for forgiveness, all of those things to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, all praise be upon him. So that's something I was thinking about as you were talking. And I would love it if our guests who have joined us today, please feel free to use the Q&A. If you just want to make a comment or bring up a talking point, we would love to incorporate you into our dialogue. And also, I would love for you, Imam, to say more about how being at home because of the coronavirus, how families with small children, or even those of us who have maybe, someone in our family who's sick and we're not able to spend time with them, or we're trying to work from home and, like you said, get out of our pajamas, like different things we can do to kind of survive this time. Love to hear more of your perspective on that.
Yeah, so when it comes to your family around you, you want to within obviously your own limitations, you want to have a sense of discipline. So for example, for parents with younger kids, it really depends on the age of the kids, obviously. I don't have kids, but I raise my younger siblings, so I know a little bit about it, change their diapers and stuff. Basically, one of the important things is, as they're growing up, you want to discipline them based off of time. You can't do it if they're infants. You're kind of at their mercy. When they wake up, you have to wake up. When they're hungry, you have to take care of them. But when they get a little older, it's really important for this day and age, and the young parents with kids now, to not solve every problem by just trying to get rid of their kids. For example, by giving them an iPad, or giving them letting them watch something on TV. Let them do something useful with their time, and it requires that discipline. Whether it's through education, to sit down and teach them, not necessarily through screens, also opening books, and writing with their hands. It's really important to practice these things as well. Or even just, the activities at home, exercising, or my dad, for example, when he would want to fix something in the house, he would make sure that I was there to watch. And so, doing these little projects at home together as a family is really important, and it's healthy for everyone's state of being. If you're able to do that, you kind of feel a little refreshed, and you can focus on your tasks that you're trying to accomplish. And it's really important to have that clarity when you're managing your time. With regards to loved ones who are facing illnesses, or are in special circumstances, you want to spend that special time with people. It's really important. Your family is not always going to be around you. That's the sad truth to things. There's always a beginning and there's always an end, and you don't want to procrastinate with your loved ones, with the time that you spend with your loved ones. Eventually, there's going to be a time where they're not there, and you're going to say, I wish I spent more time with them. I wish I sat down and drank some coffee with my mom and just chatted. I wish I, did the lawn with my dad, or change the oil with my dad or something, or my siblings. I wish, we played on the PlayStation together, whatever it is. You want to take advantage of your time with your family members and spend it, and actually make it a point, dedicate your time to them, so that, your bond is stronger. And also in the future, you look back and you say, we had a great time. I'm not sure if we have any questions from the audience.
Actually, at this time, we haven't, well, we did have one comment. I did reply to to the person that typed, it wasn't really in the form of a question. So if any of the other people on our panel have any questions, you can let me know those as well if you want to join in. But going back to your earlier talk, I think one thing you talked a little bit about appearance. You talked also about like our physical environment. Okay, we have one question that just came in, which I'll go to that. So I was just going to say that I think because this is such a unusual time, it is important for us all, I think, to be very forgiving of ourselves in terms of the emotional roller coaster that we might be experiencing. I know I was speaking to someone earlier about how a couple weeks ago I was feeling really just sad and weepy, and this week I have felt, alhamdulillah, thanks be to God, really happy. So I'm just kind of going with it, but there are days where I feel like I am not productive at all, and I'm really hard on myself. And so I think it's important reminder for all of us to be gentle and just take it, one step at a time, in terms of our spiritual well-being and our mental and physical well-being, and just do those little things to help us to feel good. So transitioning over here to some topics. So one question is, what are some books that we can read that talk about this topic specifically? I know there's a lot of articles out there, but what are some books that you could suggest?
About time management, I don't know. A lot of what I read is based off of the classical books that I have, but they're not really specific to this subject. Perhaps it may come up. There is one book that I see one question has to do with breaking out of a cycle of bad time management.
Yeah.
To kind of motivate yourself, there's this really good book that talks about building yourself and being more motivated, and that is Grit by Angela Duckworth. It talks a lot about what's the element that makes successful people. Successful people are not always the most talented. They're not always the ones with all the money or the resources. You see that it's not even the smartest people. They're not always the best when it comes to their field. So what is it that makes a successful person? It goes back to grit, which is to maintain that consistency. And so it's a really good book that talks about that concept, and that can be translated into time management, because when we're managing our time, you have to have grit. You have to have that discipline to say, you know what, I'm not going to listen to my stomach. I'm going to hold back on eating all those whatever they are, the cake or all the nice delicious food that our spouses are making for us, right? So you want to have that composure, and you have to have grit and discipline. And it's the same thing for anything else, whether you want to study, you want to do 30 minutes every day preparing for your SAT or GRE or whatever it is, you have to have grit. You have to have that that discipline and that consistency. And so that's what Angela Duckworth talks about in that book, and I really highly suggest it. It's a really good book.
Right, and we actually put the title. We were able to, a couple of us put that in there for any of the attendees. So I believe it's Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. Does that sound like the correct book? Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, I'm just looking back through here. Okay, so there was another question from, well, there are a couple more questions. So another one is, between home life and Islamic work like volunteering, which takes priority? And I might also push in there too, in terms of, even though we're at home, we have our spiritual life, but we also have work. Some of us work one or more jobs now from home. And then also we're trying to volunteer, and we're trying to make sure that for Ramadan, we're praying everything we're supposed to pray and doing everything we're supposed to do. So help us understand how we can manage all of those things and determine what takes priority, and will God be forgiving whatever happens. Help us know.
Yeah, so when it comes to prioritizing properly, a Muslim's life is it circles around pleasing God. And pleasing God is not just, doing worship. It's also living a responsible life. And so a responsible life goes back to taking care of the things that matter the most, and you prioritize it in the right way, right? So you don't want to put your socks over your shoes. You want to put your socks on and then you put your shoes on. Or put your cereal first and then your milk. I know that's controversial, but um, so when it comes to these priorities, the first and most important thing, and this goes back to the spiritual sense of time management, is pleasing God. That is the most important thing beyond anything else. Now, everything else is built off of that anyway. So when I say that taking care of your family comes before serving the masjid, that's because it is more pleasing to God for you to take care of your family and to take care of your parents and to take care of your children and to take care of your siblings. That actually takes precedence over volunteering. And it doesn't make sense for a person to be volunteering out in the world and their relationship with their family is deteriorating. You want to focus on your family, and Allah says in the Quran, worship your Lord and do not associate partners with him, and with your parents do good, because they come hand in hand. Taking care of your family is the highest priority, and so you also don't want your volunteering to come at the expense of your work, right? You want your livelihood, you want to live in a way that you're not asking for people, you want to give to people. And so you prioritize your work, and once you have your time to give to the community at large, then you can do so. And everyone is different in their proportions. Some people have more leeway to volunteer, and others don't.
Excellent, excellent. I know I, for one, used to spend more time volunteering. I'm definitely not trying to be a proponent of telling people not to volunteer as much. That's not my point here. But I do want to say that there was a point, where I was volunteering quite a bit, and then some things were happening in my family, my immediate family, and I realized, like, I have to make choices because I can't balance both. And you're right. I mean, from a spiritual standpoint, from our religious standpoint, family does come first, and so it's good that God has made that clear for us, that we have to put our spiritual life first, but we also have to put our family first. And so I let go of as many things as I possibly could that were unrelated to my livelihood in terms of my job, and focus then more on my family. And eventually it did, I feel like it did definitely make a huge difference in my life. And so I've really tried to internalize that and use that as a balance. So I think it's important for people to be able to not only be able to do it, but to reassess, how is your family life? Is one of your children having a lot of problems? Are you and your spouse, having a lot of problems? Do you need to cut back so that you can focus more on those aspects of your life? Because your family life is, it's your home. So you have to, now more than ever, we are very aware of our family life and its health. So
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity in that way too. Okay, so we had some other really good questions. I'm going to jump to one that someone posted a little bit late, and that's okay. But I think we still have a good amount of time, so I think we can back up to some other questions as well. But I have a teenager and I have 2 adult children. One just finished, his college term this year, and he has the summer. He's got a job, so I'm not worried about him. But I have a daughter who just finished high school this week, and she doesn't have a state ID. She also doesn't have a driver's license yet. And so getting a job would be difficult. Not sure that I want her to anyway in this current state. But what are some ways that teens can manage their time, especially over the summer, to balance their emotions, to balance their lack of, being able to socialize? Because we know that is an age where it's all about your friends. Of course, we don't want people constantly glued to their screens, even though a lot of us are. I'm on Zoom way more than I want to be, believe me. But what's your advice for us in working with our teenagers and helping them, guiding them during this time?
So I'll give the example of clay. When you want to make pottery or make a little toy or whatever you're going to make out of the clay, right? There's a time where you're putting in the ingredients to make sure that the proportions and the ratios are just right so that it comes out nice and strong. That time is analogous to a human's age of, I would say, from 3 to 10, right? That elementary age. Now, as the ingredients have been mixed in, it becomes soft, and you want to shape it in the right way, right? Whether you want to make it into a bowl, you want to make it into a cup, you want to make it into whatever it is, right? Before it heats up and it gets solid. That is adulthood. When it becomes solid, it becomes extremely hard to change. You have to put it through fire so that you can change it again, right? And that's what adulthood is. That's why adults don't change unless extreme circumstances happen. That's when they're able to flip the switch because they've already solidified as people. Teenagers are that in between where it's the ingredients are there. You just have to mold it in the right time. And so to every teenager, I would tell them to really work on their individual skills, whether that's the quickness of their reading and their typing, for example, or their skills in writing properly and these technical aspects of who they are, learning math, because math is logic. It carries on later on when in life, when you want to deduce things in life, learning math helps that. Talking to people, having the confidence to give public speaking, your exercise, and a lot of the training that you do. My uncle, when I was younger, he's 11 years older than me. When he was a teenager, he would put me on his shoulders and he would run 2 miles. And now for him, it's easy, right? Because during that molding phase, the technical part was taken care of. And so you want to really focus on these technical things, learning how to read and process information and absorb information as much as possible, learning how to deliver that information in the most coherent manner. During the teenage age, you want to practice that and you want to learn it as much as possible. Your body, you want to take care of your body, you want to exercise, you want to put it through a little bit of toughness so that it's strong. And when the time comes, when you're older, you'll be able to lean back on that experience and you won't have a lot of, bone cracking problems, right? Joint problems or whatever it is. If you exercise in those teenage years and you spend your time building your body, it's an investment that carries on later. And so when it comes to time management in that specific time, I highly encourage sports. I highly encourage studies. I highly encourage, even certain strategy games, like whether you're going to play chess or other strategy games that help advance your mind. You're training your mind to go forward and expand. Have difficult conversations because you're growing and you want to have conversations and you don't just want to shut things down. All of these aspects are important for teenagers so that they can grow in a healthy way. And later on, they become independent and in their adult life, they're fortified and they know who they are as people and they're able to move forward with confidence.
Okay, great. So I would say I think those are all great suggestions, especially for parents. Especially if you have a child who is a teenager who is pretty self-motivated. I think I know for me, I have 3 kids. I have one of my kids is extremely self-motivated. I have another one that's very good about likes routine. So this has actually been really difficult for her because we're at home. And part of what gets her out in the morning, gets her feeling good, is being on a routine. So this has been challenging. So I think for a student who's pretty self-motivated or maybe has a good relationship with their parents, do you have any advice for the families who maybe their teenagers were already struggling with maybe depression or some other aspects that make, kind of like being motivated difficult? So do you have any suggestions or advice for those parents who may be struggling now that their teenager is at home and is maybe even feeling more closed off, do you have tips to help them or to incentivize them, like anything that you might offer from an Islamic perspective?
When it comes to depression and these things, I would seek people who have more knowledge about that. I'm not a psychologist, or and so I think it would be best to talk to somebody who understands that. I believe MCC did a webinar about emotional well-being or mental health. Maybe we can put it in the comments, but it's up on YouTube. It's available. So I would check that out, and I would seek professional help if you have these kind of illnesses. Now, if it's something that there's a difference between a chemical hormonal problem that is probably happening on the inside, or whatever's happening in the body. That's something that needs professional help. If it's something that I wouldn't use the word depression, maybe just feeling down, without having got the extreme of depression. If it's just a person who you're feeling in a slum, you're feeling a little lazy, you're feeling a little sad, I really would suggest having good company and having good role models. That when you look up to somebody, it changes things, and you want to relate to that person you're looking up to. So I would look for a role model that you can relate with really well. That what's important to them is important to you, and you feel a sense of yourself in that person, and you want to accomplish something similar to what they accomplished. Learn from their experience, look into their life, I know they have the Michael Jordan series that just came out on Netflix. I heard it's really good. So, for those who want to do good in basketball and they feel like, they have the yips or whatever it is, and they're not doing good in basketball right now, find an example in Michael Jordan and do good in basketball, just kind of like how he did. And that's just an example that can be carried on to any other example. If for example, you want to learn how to recite the Quran properly, or you want to learn medicine and you want to do good at it, learn from the people who have accomplished their aspirations and follow in their footsteps while modifying it to your own personal circumstances.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and as you were talking, I do know that a lot of places, if you do have someone that lives with you in your home who, including yourself, who you might find that in this time, I mean, these are unprecedented times. We all have been home for way more days than we ever imagined or would want to be home, most of us. Then if you find yourself in a situation, I do know that there are many counseling centers that are offering, you can do online or over the phone counseling. So do seek those opportunities out if there's someone in your family who you feel would benefit from that. Just to reiterate what Sheikh Ibrahim was saying about talking to professionals as needed. So great. And I'm just looking through here. I think we have time for maybe one more question. There was another comment here I wanted to come back to. Someone did ask, is if chess specifically was Islamically permissible. Maybe you could just make a point to mention if there are any games, maybe board games or such, that you don't think are permissible. But in general, what would you say on that topic?
Yeah, that's a classical discussion, but chess is permissible because everything is permissible unless you have something that can prove that it's not. But there's no verse there from the Quran. There is no narration of the Prophet that says chess is not allowed. And you also have to say, what is chess, right? Today is different than 1,000 years ago. But the scholars, they say that it's okay, as long as it's not becoming something that is wasting your time. So that and other games or whatever they may be, they are permissible, as long as that you're not wasting your time. And there are narrations of scholars that used to play chess too. So
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully, I see the name of the person who asked that question. So inshallah, hopefully she heard the answer. And then the last thing I would ask before we wrap things up, there was another person that mentioned Many people feel that multitasking is a good tool for time management. Do you feel this is a good tool? And can people multitask well? And then maybe you can also, I know I, for one, making lists, setting little alarms for myself to help keep myself on track. Those are some things that help me. But perhaps you could say more about that multitasking component.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. So some people can, some people can't. I personally feel that if you want something to be 100%, you want to give it 100% and then move on to the next. Now, there are certain things that can be multitasked. So, for example, my friend's an electrical engineer. He'll probably have a program running while he's doing something else. And he knows that it's going to take maybe an hour or 2 hours for it to finish, and he wants to do another task in the meantime. So in that sense, sure, but doing two things simultaneously at the same time can kind of pull your brain in different ways. So focusing on one thing is probably for the best, and making sure you complete it. I know for me, one of the biggest struggles is finishing one book before starting another. So you want to complete a task, complete it to its fullest, and then, you can move on from there.
Okay, great. And I do know, depending on different personality types, some people are really good at multitasking. Some people, it's just not one of their strengths. So we do all have different ways of working and processing information. And it's actually, it takes skill to be able to do that as well and do it effectively. So,
well, yeah, and God says in the Quran, مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِرَجُلٍ مِّن قَلْبَيْنِ فِي جَوْفِهِ. God did not make in any man two hearts in their bodies. Meaning that you can't think about two things at the same time. You can't read something while thinking about something else. One of them is going to clash. And so it's good to focus on one thing and then, move on to the next task.
Yeah, it's like when I'm asking my kids a question and I want to know if they're really listening, I'll throw in something else in there just to see what the reply is. Mm-hmm. Do they just say, uh-huh, okay, or do they actually
my wife does that to me too.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Our time is coming to a close. We would ask that you would just keep our masjid in your prayers. Please remember that there are many ways that you can donate, as well as your gifts, as you were able to give your gifts. We also have a quick poll that you should have seen pop up on your screen. If you don't mind just taking a moment to answer that. But we do appreciate you coming. We hope that you will join us again on Tuesday night. I will be back as the moderator. Sheikh Ibrahim will be back as well, and he is going to be talking about the pearls of Jannah, which for those of you who are non-Muslim, Jannah just means paradise. So he will be talking about the beauty of paradise, or the pearls, the most special aspects of paradise. So but please look in the chat box. Please donate to either of those today or in the future. We thank you so much in advance for your generosity, and we look forward to seeing you again soon, inshallah. So thank you again for joining us tonight, and stay safe and healthy, and assalamu alaikum and jazakallah khairan. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon our panelists, our speaker tonight, and for all of you who helped make this possible. So thank you everyone so much, and have a wonderful night.